Hi, and welcome to New Gods Sunday School. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design. I'm going to be giving you a personal tour of my favorite comic book series, or meta-series, The New Gods by Jack Kirby. I'm not just going to limit this discussion to the comic titled New Gods. I'm also going to expand it to his larger fourth world, which is what this grouping of comics was called. New Gods, Forever People, Mr. Miracle, and then also intermittently Jimmy Olsen. And they formed this large overarching narrative. Now, Kirby's initial plan was that the whole line of books, New Gods, Forever People, and Mr. Miracle, not Jimmy Olsen, as a group, they'd be called the New Gods. The comic that we call New Gods was going to be titled Orion. So it would be Orion of the New Gods, Forever People of the New Gods. But at some point, the decision was made to just call the Orion series New Gods. So here we are. What I have here on the left is the Baxter reprint from the 80s, which has these nice wraparound covers that Jack did specifically for this series. And this was, in the 80s after New Gods had been canceled, they, wanted to get them back into print. Baxter printed on a better quality paper with more saturated colors. On the right is the original printing of New Gods #1. This to me is a beautiful book, just the whole package. Obviously mine's sort of falling apart. It's a very old comic at this point from 1971, I believe. But I mean, just that cover kind of looks like nothing else on the shelves. You have this like beautiful, intricate drawing that Kirby did as actually like a full, poster size thing, and hand colored it, and it's shrunken down. There's interesting production work going on here on the background. It's a very special comic, and the cover communicates that. A little bit of like a collage element. I'm not sure who did the background. I've heard that this like interesting textured background was, possibly done by Neil Adams. There's a couple different versions of the art for this cover floating around. So much going on typographically. Kirby is here. When the old gods died, there arose the new gods, an epic for our times. Read, Orion Fights for Earth. So let's get started. I've got some writing in pencil down here. You might find this in a lot of my comics that I show, because a lot of times I'll be reading comics and I'll get ideas for things I can do, maybe unrelated to New Gods, or maybe, for like New Gods, especially when I was working on superpowers. So I have some notes down there about, possible comics that I could do. The way they promoted it within the house ads at the time at DC was, have you ever heard of a comic that starts with an epilogue and ends with a prologue? That's New Gods #1. And so here we are. Epilogue. There came a time when the old gods died. The brave died with the cunning. The noble perished, locked in battle with unleashed evil. It was the last day for them. An ancient era was passing in fiery holocaust. Kirby's initial idea for the New Gods would be sort of a continuation of Norse mythology. So this would be, the story of Ragnarok. And you can see some of the elements in the background. You see a guy who looks like he's got a helmet similar to Thor and holding a hammer. You have a giant dragon, possibly the Midgard serpent. You have sort of trollish figures in the bottom. It was initially an idea he created for Marvel, and maybe even pitched to Stan Lee, and then sort of took back, at a point where he felt like, his contributions to Marvel weren't being, fully appreciated, and sort of held back on, and then saved it for when he went over to DC. So continuity-wise, it would continue straight from the Tales of Asgard or whatever. There was also talk that like he possibly wanted to do a like big event at Marvel. Decades before those things became commonplace, where they'd have some big cataclysmic event, this sort of destruction of Asgard, and that they'd sort of reinvent the entire line as a result. So, characters would die and make way for, a new generation of characters. Kind of a fresh start. I think Kirby was growing tired of, some of the cliches of the superhero comics, and using old characters, his own old characters, really old characters like Captain America, and then other people's old characters like Submariner and sort of the Human Torch. But he was also growing old of the characters he started in the early '60s, like the Fantastic Four, and looking for a fresh start. So that wasn't going to happen in the Marvel of the late '60s or early '70s, because they had a successful formula going, and you don't mess with success. But Kirby was that sort of restless creative mind. He wanted new challenges and felt that he could create something even better. And in my opinion, he does here. There's also talk about the possibility that that the work he was doing at Marvel was sort of leading towards this. That he was doing the Tales of Asgard, and one of the last stories was like the story of Ragnarok, and then he sort of backed away from Tales of Asgard and suggested to Stan that it had run its course and discontinued it, but maybe it was that he didn't want to introduce this like next phase there. And then there were also a lot of discarded storylines and artwork featuring this idea of Galactus attacking Asgard, possibly destroying it. So maybe he would have been part of this Ragnarok too, a Ragnarok that would have been a combination of like the Norse Ragnarok and then a specifically Marvel Ragnarok, specifically Kirby Marvel and Kirby Norse mythology and Kirby superhero Ragnarok. That sort of context is interesting and enriches this material. But I think the fact that it's published separately and Kirby did what he did with it kind of also frees it up to not necessarily be that these don't necessarily have to be the Norse gods. They could be, they're their own thing and maybe have a little touch of Norse flavor, but also a touch of Kirby flavor and sci-fi flavor. And since Kirby never got a chance to delve too deeply into the backstory of the old gods, they stay somewhat mysterious and full of possibility. But I mean, some creators have sort of taken that thing literally and run with it as them being, sort of the old gods or the Norse gods. But I think it works better to think of them in like a broader way. And so the final moment came with the final release of indescribable power, which tore the home of the old gods asunder, split it in great halves, and filled the universe with the blinding death flash of its destruction. So we're seeing the destruction of, Asgard, and it's sort of shaped like Asgard. It doesn't look like a spherical planet. It looks more like a sort of flattish planet. But also, the fact that it is a fresh start for Kirby. Maybe it's not supposed to be Asgard. Maybe it's supposed to be something else. And I see some of the shapes in here. We have Vince Colletta's inks, which are sort of notorious for sort of leaving out a lot of detail and simplifying, especially in these sort of scenes of destruction. I guess, in Colletta's calculation when he's inking this, it's like, okay, certain things are important, certain things aren't as important. And, one rubble is just as good as another rubble. So, you can ink them however you want. Maybe a little more fidelity in the faces or whatever. But the rubble, you could tell was sort of low priority. But I think we are seeing, what I'm seeing here is I'm seeing sort of a skull face here and maybe some horns. So this planet that's got evil and good running through it, it might have been like more interesting than Asgard, another take on Asgard, and might have had, some cool sort of, Castle Grayskull type geography. It also makes sense that, in this body of work later on, Kirby does a story called Transylvane, where it's this planet that has horns growing out of it. So it might be an interesting project for me to try to draw, what I might infer this planet of the old gods looked like, going with the sort of skull thing and maybe trying to find some other shapes in it, just a sort of a fun project. In the end, there were two giant molten bodies, spinning slow and barren, clean of all that had gone before, adrift in the fading sounds of cosmic thunder. So you got the planet splits in two, and those two pieces spin and then become round, like more typical planets that we know of. So these old gods, who knows how old they are, and maybe their world predates spherical worlds. Maybe they're so old that worlds hadn't had enough time to sort of spin around and become spherical. So it splits into two halves. Silence closed upon what had happened, a long, deep silence wrapped in massive darkness. It was this way for an age. Then there was new light. So we're seeing a sort of a Ragnarok, an end of the world myth, a destruction myth, but then we're also seeing a creation myth at the same time, because these things are cyclical. And maybe had New Gods, run its course completely, maybe we would have seen a new beginning, not too different from this. As a matter of fact, we kind of do now that I mention it. So that'll be fun to explore as we get to those issues. I'm not sure if Kirby expresses it in this issue, but he expresses it later that sort of all the evil got sucked into one planet and all the good got sucked into the other, and those two planets became New Genesis and Apocalypse. Across the vast distances where the mysteries deepen and hide and wait with answers not yet known, a call has been heard, a name summoned for the ultimate mission to thwart the ultimate destruction. Thus he comes, the protector, wielder of the Astroforce, Orion of the New Gods, an epic for our time. I have heard the word. It is battle. Orion Fights for Earth, written, drawn, and edited by Jack Kirby, inked by Vince Colletta. So that's a big thing of what Kirby was fighting for in going from Marvel to DC. He wanted full credit for his creations. He wanted to do things his way. He didn't want to have to sort of compromise. He had a vision and he wanted to follow it, and didn't want someone else taking credit for things that he created. He wanted no ambiguity. And the only way to have no ambiguity is to do it all yourself. Although he probably should have inked it and colored it too. As a result, we were able to get more comics out of this period by him, just writing, drawing, and penciling them and editing them. Who knows why someone loves a work of art, but again, for me, this is just my favorite series, this whole comic. I love this first issue. It's just so wonderful. And when I think about, what it is about this comic that appeals to me, is just that it's just sort of this beautiful combination and distillation of everything I love. It's a combination of superheroes, science fiction, fantasy, Tolkien-esque, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons kind of fantasy, with Star Wars and He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and Conan. It's just like all of these things, just kind of fused together in this like very potent, this like just really powerful combination. Just sort of like, to me, it's like what I'd been, when I discovered these, I was kind of like, yeah, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And of course, it is funny to say that it's like Star Wars or like Masters of the Universe, because those are things that came after this, and things that were very likely influenced by this. But it's just, we all come at things, our own personal way. And I mean, I wasn't born when this comic was coming out. So I knew about Star Wars and knew about Masters of the Universe long before I knew about this. The first inkling I got of any of this was when Darkseid started showing up on the Superpowers Saturday morning show, and kind of blew my mind, and, learning about the planet Apocalypse. And then when I got older and went into college and started learning that, oh wait, there's more to the story than I thought. There's Apocalypse, but then there's also a good guy planet, called New Genesis, and there's a hero, there's a hero equivalent to Darkseid. I was very excited when I first learned about this series, and it just, gave me everything I was looking for. So I am toyed with by flashing light trails guiding me home. There is only one master of this familiar phenomenon. Welcome back, Orion. New Genesis has been a dull place without you. Lead on, Light Ray. No more glorious sight has ever greeted any eyes than that of New Genesis, home of the New Gods, a golden island of gleaming spires that orbits a sunlit, unspoiled world of green forests, white mountains, and bright waters. The true place of peace, it sings a haunting song, even to the warrior heart. Make haste, Orion. He's flying home through this, glorious, multicolored space, very comic booky. Obviously, I mean, there's Coletta-isms mixed in with the Kirby-isms. In later issues, you'll start to see sort of pure Kirby space. But even this like Coletta-fied Kirby space is just so much fun. The rough and the combination of Kirby and Coletta is, I do like it. I do like it. Again, the thing I miss is the bits and pieces that are sort of edited out by the inker. But it is really fun to look at. But I mean, look at this. So as a kid growing up with Star Wars and He-Man and stuff, you see this thing. It's being told very seriously. It's not a joke. It's not a goof. And then you have this like beautiful city that looks kind of like Bespin, Cloud City. And then also, I mean, I grew up with the Marvel, the Jack Kirby Thor comics too. Those I had access to those too. So you got the Asgard combined with Cloud City with this like sort of Technicolor approach, and just the mythology of it, that like the planet itself is unspoiled and green and lush and doesn't have any like mark of civilization, and the people live in this floating city and possibly other floating cities. Again, Kirby didn't, if he had gotten to do 100 issues of this, who knows what we would have seen. But we have 11 issues of this, and then 11 issues of the Forever People, and then 18 or 19 issues of Mr. Miracle, and then a couple of sort of later works that he did to sort of tie things up 12 or 13 years later. It's just beautiful to look at, but the story's really cool too. You're just seeing this new universe unfold, one panel at a time, one page at a time. See there, Orion is back. It is rumored that he's been summoned by Highfather himself. There is trouble abroad, you can be sure of that. Orion treads only where danger threatens. There are no ominous signs to be seen in New Genesis. It still glows with eternal splendor. You must stay this time, Orion. Forget the sound of battle. Learn to laugh again. So we have these two sort of, best friends established that, Orion's been off on some dangerous mission for a really long time, and this reunion of friends, and we're already seeing, the way they contrast with each other, Orion's seriousness and Light Ray's lightheartedness. And man, look at all this stuff. I mean, it's just so much fun, for somebody who loves sci-fi. Someone who loves sci-fi like me, and then somebody who loves sci-fi like Jack Kirby. I mean, Jack Kirby grew up with the sci-fi pulps. That's what he's a fan of. He loves comics, but he didn't grow up with comics the way he grew up with the sci-fi pulps. Those are the things he avidly collected. And if you look at those covers and read those stories and look at the illustrations in there, he's delivering on the promise of those stories, of those covers. He's creating stories that do justice to those like amazing images that he grew up reading about. I fear that my recall is not a laughing matter, Light Ray. Nonsense. To laugh is to feel the beat of life. Live, Orion, live. Of all the Celestials, you are the one most plagued by shadows, and you prattle on like a novice. My destiny is battle. I wield the mighty power of the Astroforce. It is a grim and fearful responsibility. It would not be so in my hands. Perhaps. We are different, you and I, and yet good friends. Yes, but I hide nothing from you, whereas inside you there are chambers which no one may enter. That is true. I am two worlds, like New Genesis and that demon's pit apocalypse. One drifting forever in the shadow of the other. Orion, I didn't mean so much. He refers to him as a celestial, and Kirby has a lot of words he uses to describe the gods that he uses in this, and Eternals. You'll see the term Eternals thrown around in here. You'll see the term Celestials thrown around. I love Astroforce and what that implies. Of course, it's like, as a Star Wars kid reading this, it's like, Astroforce, may the Astroforce be with you. And the Astroforce is never quite specifically defined in here, though you do see its power. But then there's something more equivalent to the Force from Star Wars in here called the Source, which is almost like a one-to-one of George Lucas's Force in the Source. Light Ray falls silent. He has said too much. Orion's face is a cloud which has hidden all paths leading to himself. Leave me, Light Ray. My mission is with Highfather and a task on Earth. As ever, he can be found where the voices of the young are raised in chorus. An interesting contrast with sort of the Asgardian Norse mythology that Kirby was doing in Thor, because that was like a martial civilization. It was based around war and fighting. And here you see it's a town, it's a city or a world of super beings, superheroes. They have those colorful, elaborate outfits, but it's not a city of war. He's not carrying some kind of axe or mace or something. He's carrying a shepherd's crook. He's listening to the singing of the children. They're not, sort of gathering, some army or marching around or something. The song ends, but the beauty of it must never fade or die, Orion. You summoned me, High Father, and I am here. First, we bow to the young. They are the carriers of life. They must remain free, Orion. Life flowers in freedom. In this cause I live as well. We're establishing the stakes of this story here, that there's sort of freedom and peace and love, and again, this is early 70s. It was created in the mid to late 60s, sort of the peace movement, the hippie movement, flower power, peace and love, and so I mean it feeds into this sort of science fiction superhero setting really nicely. You have this sort of admirable dream and this admirable community on this planet where the old bow to the young and understand their importance. And I'm sure Kirby, as a father, felt this too, as a father whose kids were part of that 60s generation. There is danger then. Life and freedom are threatened on a scale never before attempted. Come, we go to the chamber of the source. This wall is our link with the source. It lived even as the old gods died. That is so. It is eternal. It is the life equation, and its power is a part of your wonder staff. Chamber of the source and the source wall. I'd love to see the pencils. Again, we don't really have access to the pencils. We don't have we have copies of the original pencil drawings of Kirby for a lot of his work, but we don't have it for sort of the early issues of New Gods, Forever People, and Mr. Miracle. And it's a shame. If you look at the artist's editions, you can kind of get little glimpses of it here and there where it didn't quite fully erase. But I'd love to see what this room looks like, if these shapes are anything other than sort of abstractions of sort of like a crystalline chamber. But at the end of it is the source wall, which is sort of like a sort of mystical wall where messages from the source show up, where they're written in hands of flame. It's also a little bit like the monolith in 2001, and when Kirby, draws the 2001 comic, it looks very much like the source wall. All this can be ended, Orion. Highfather has not told you all. Metron, you icy mask, have you been summoned too? Why, you, for a scrap of knowledge, you would sell the universe into slavery. Who runs the universe matters not. What makes it run is my prime objective. So now we're introducing yet another character. It's a whole universe he's introducing in this first issue, and we have Metron. And what a beautiful, introduction. He's very aloof on this sort of cosmic throne, godlike, seemingly a god among gods, and the way he sort of appears in transparency and then solidifies. It's just really great image making, really great storytelling. Kirby gets a lot out of Metron's, seeming omnipotence, seeming omniscience, and then, seeing, his sort of limitations and his failings. We're establishing a conflict with him and Orion. They're sort of allied, but Orion doesn't trust or like him, and that shows up again through this issue, because he would almost be like a, like a teacher figure, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi, or like a Yoda. Or like a magical genie, doing, sort of Deus Ex Machina stuff. And he's doing those sort of things, but at the same time, Orion's sort of fighting with him, and they're disagreeing, and it just has a little extra narrative tension. Silence, the wonder staff which called you is in turn summoned by the source. The wall awaits the written word, what I wouldn't give to possess the knowledge of the source. You know too much already. Be content with your Mobius chair, which rides the dimension winds of time-space. It can defy any barrier but the one which guards the secret of the source. Yeah, we have this like warrior, we have this, Moses-like figure, and then we have, this omnipotent space Buddha who's seeks knowledge and would do anything for knowledge. The moving hand appears. The source gives us the irrevocable counsel, but it does not decide. The right of choice is ours. That is the life equation. The anti-life equation was undiscovered until these days. It means the outside control of all living thought. And so you have that finger, which is, like a reference to the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam or the story of Daniel in the Bible. I'm not up on all this stuff, but that's my sense of it. It's a comic, it's words and pictures, and so, you have a character that expresses itself through, handwritten lettering. Orion to apocalypse, then to earth, then to war. And I also like the fact that they have like a prophecy and directions from this, divine source, but also it's like, none of this is written in stone, no pun intended. It's our choice, whether to follow this or not. And that's what, distinguishes them from Darkseid, from their enemy, is that Darkseid believes there should be no choice in the universe, that, everybody should do what he wants them to do or what he tells them to do. And they know that, life is about choice, about freedom. We're getting Kirby's philosophy through here. The universe, slave or free, on apocalypse, their ruler, Darkseid, has already made that choice. What shall be ours, Orion? First to apocalypse, then to earth, then to war. So Orion he's a good soldier. And so, for all of, Highfather's talk about, freedom and getting to choose, things are very clear in Orion's head. He likes having this sort of, these very clear instructions, these very clear orders that he can follow, even if, maybe that's not the best thing for him. That's sort of the path he's on. It's so much great character stuff going on here. Very efficiently, too. Metron says, "How wondrously wise is the source. Who is more ready to fight the Father than the Son? Metron, hold your tongue, you toy with my wrath." Now, Metron is, talking about, very clearly, like, it is a surprise, spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't read this or doesn't know. Big spoiler alert. Please turn it off now. Counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kirby right here, like Alfred Hitchcock or something, is spelling out, a big secret reveal that comes later in the series, well into the series. But he has it right here because it's early enough in the series that a reader wouldn't really know what to make of this information. So he's saying, who is more ready to fight the Father than the Son? Now, I feel like it's pretty famously established at this point to most comics fans that Darkseid is Orion's father, like, Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Hope I didn't spoil anything there for you. It's kind of nice because it doesn't spell that out, because at this point you don't even know who Darkseid is. And, who's more ready to fight the Father than the Son? He's going to Apocalypse. Anybody on Apocalypse could be his father. Maybe his father's Kalibak. Maybe it's Desaad. But it's all right there. Yes, they're sending the son to fight his father. Highfather tells him, shut up. It's like, that's a secret, you wise ass. Did you think I didn't know? Orion the mighty, Orion the fierce. Could this be one born of new Genesis? No, Apocalypse. But it is not time for him to know. You shall keep the secret. Meanwhile, Orion leaves on a journey which is to lead him to a strange destiny. Ahead lies Apocalypse in the shadow of New Genesis. There'll be no cheery greeting there. And yeah, look at this beautiful drawing here and the colors. I mean, Kirby was not fond of the coloring that he got on these early issues of New Gods when he was at DC. He felt there were too many secondary colors. The colors were too dark. But man, if the other side of good is evil, then surely Apocalypse is the other side. Even its giant energy pits feed on the world itself to gain its power and light. Kirby's creating this comic, writing it in the late 60s, early 70s. And, the environmental, movement is happening, and this awareness of, sort of the damage that we do to the planet with, irresponsible consumption, irresponsible energy use. And Kirby's talking about that here. This was a concern, that he had. It is a dismal, unclean place of great, ugly houses, sheltering uglier machines. Apocalypse is an armed camp where those who live with weapons rule the wretches who build them. All that New Genesis stands for is reversed on Apocalypse. Life is the evil here, and death the great goal. So with Apocalypse and New Genesis, we're really seeing two possible outcomes for the planet Earth, that Earth could become this sort of unlivable hell like Apocalypse, or it could become this egalitarian, clean, beautiful, utopian society. And of course, Kirby's drawing on his own experiences here. He fought in World War II. He fought against the Nazis in Europe, and so he saw this kind of hell on earth up close. So he really is talking from his own experience. And so many of Kirby's characters are autobiographical, but I feel like Orion is very autobiographical, and he's kind of the soldier Kirby. Suddenly, stop the intruder, parademons, the sentries of Apocalypse. It is Orion of New Genesis. Careful, he possesses the Astroforce. He won't use it. He is like us. He worships combat. He desires the nearness of death. Then die, Orion. You cannot enter Apocalypse. I shall. It is written. It is my destiny. One after another, and so many of these things have become toys, have become parts of movies, have become parts of video games. Kirby's creating a gold mine here that DC in the 70s did not have the sense to fully understand or grasp what Kirby was creating here. Look at this beautiful drawing. I love that face there. But the power of the parademons is overwhelming, and Orion's mission is urgent. The Astroforce, I must use it, though I myself may be caught in its unleashed power. Zzz. It was a short burst, but I am free of them. Regaining his equilibrium, Orion descends. Before him looms a huge, awesome figure, hewn of rugged stone. Hail Darkseid, ruler of Apocalypse. We're getting introduced to Darkseid little by little, through first hearing his name and hearing about him, then seeing his planet, then seeing the people who work for him, then seeing a statue of him. We're getting there little by little. And, Kirby had sort of, honed this skill. We saw it in The Coming of Galactus. Before you meet Galactus, you hear people talking about him. Then you see the Silver Surfer. Then you see, his spaceship. Then you see him, this sort of staging of information. And we learn a lot about the character of Darkseid. He's the kind of guy who erects giant statues of himself and puts them all over his planet. That kind of right there tells you about the sort of, this sort of, totalitarian that he is, this sort of cosmic bully. Wielder of Holocaust, disciple of power and death, you shall never seize the anti-life equation while I am in the fight against you. And yeah, we're hearing about the life equation earlier and the anti-life equation, and these things, they're just like very compelling names that will be fleshed out as the story and as the series goes on. Arrogant Orion, welcome to death. More adversaries. I will rest my equipment at the statue's foot. They won't go near it. The statue is sacred to them. That's an interesting bit too, that Darkseid has sort of set himself up as a god among gods, which is another thing. All of these characters that we've met so far are the new gods, and you have the planet of New Genesis, the sort of good new gods, and then you have Apocalypse, the bad new gods. You might expect that Apocalypse would at the same way New Genesis is filled with these sort of super beings, that Apocalypse would be filled with sort of just evil super beings, but it's not. It's, Darkseid has somehow convinced these gods that they're dogs, that they're the hunger dogs. That his regime kind of, keeps even these gods sort of stifled and unable to fulfill their sort of, vast cosmic potential. The fight's ready to happen. I love these guys are kind of like the sci-fi version of like orcs or something, And again, Kirby's built up this sort of visual language, from his experience on Thor, which Thor kind of inched its way towards this. It became sort of this like combination of sort of sci-fi and mythology and cosmic combat and whatnot. Disperse, I say. I know you for the underlings you are. Where are your more powerful masters? We have sufficient numbers to do away with you, great Orion. We are nurtured in war and savage in battle. Come, we shall swarm over you like a roaring flood. Orion does not wait. He rushes forward, striking with the stunning force of a cosmic hammer. Oh, cosmic hammer, interesting. Like Thor. That's another theory that the characters in here, possibly Orion himself, may be a great great grandson of Thor or whatnot. He has the strength of Darkseid himself. We cannot hold him. He eludes our weapons. He's breaking through our lines. In a nearby watchtower, an alarm is spread. Alert! Alert! Orion is on Apocalypse. Mobilize and attack. So this is what you read comic books. This is what you read superhero comic books for. This is what you're looking for as a Kirby fan. Just this great combat. This guy running through and of course Kirby loved football, and he's kind of this linebacker, smashing his way through these guys. And then look at this. All this great Tolkien-esque kind of stuff. I want to find out the origin of sort of kind of these kind of sci-fi soldiers riding on the backs of dogs, because Kirby does it in one of his first stories. Early on, some of his Solar Legion comics have this dog cavalry. It's such a cool idea, and I need to find out where exactly it came from. I'm assuming he did not invent it out of whole cloth. I'm assuming it's something that came from sci-fi pulps, or maybe came from mythology or something. But I need to know. I need to find out. And I'm on the trail of this information. The response is swift and deadly. There's our quarry, shoot to kill. Even one like Orion cannot shake off a radion blast. Darkseid's dog cavalry, it is suicidal to run from them. My one chance to live is to attack. Orion does the unexpected, hurling himself at the feet of the dogs. He brings them crashing earthward. The hounds of Hades are swift to regain their feet. I have only seconds to stop them. He's in hell. He's in this sort of, sci-fi cosmic mythological hell. And so we have sort of these these hounds of hell, these sort of, Cerberus kind of, creatures that he's fighting. Marshaling his colossal strength, Orion loosens a nearby stone pillar. They flee now to make the most of time before the next attack. Kirby, again and again references, the story of Samson and Delilah. So here it is yet another time, smashing this pillar and bringing it down on his enemies. Darkseid himself dwells this way, but the great halls are empty, devoid of Darkseid's elite warriors. This is great, that stance, that's a Kirby stance. This guy's really running. We could imagine another way this comic could have went. And he's, running through the halls of Darkseid's castle, this sort of, inner sanctum. And he expected to have to go up against Darkseid's elite warriors. He expected to go up against the best of the best. The place is empty. So again, more sort of, narrative tension. Empty, they're all gone. Is this what I came for? Has the source written for me a fool's destiny? Apocalypse is abandoned by its rulers. This is a mass director unit. It has been activated to transmit Darkseid's orders. This is what now rules all Apocalypse. Wrong, Orion. The director keeps order here, but it is I who guard Apocalypse. Kirby's thing of every page ends with a cliffhanger, and this is great. Some scary voice off panel. You might almost assume that the voice off panel that is whatever this statue is modeled after, this mass director unit, whatever the statue of it is modeled after, that might be who's talking off camera, so we might get to see his face. It isn't, but again, it's just, nice little moment. And we see who it is. It's not, it's some, troglodyte in his boxers. Who is more fit to rule in Darkseid's absence? Whose power but mine is more than a match for yours? This is as far as you go, Orion. You shall be the prime specimen of my torment chambers. Kalibak the cruel, the scourge of Apocalypse. I am ready for battle. In a lot of ways, he's Orion's adversary. Darkseid is his ultimate adversary, but Kalibak is sort of the one he sort of, clashes with the most. And a nice contrast, Kalibak is sort of, bestial, monstrous, and, Orion has all this sort of, superhero finery. Ulik from the troll from Thor was sort of, practice for Kalibak, and possibly, an ancestor of Kalibak. maybe his great-great-grandfather. And when Vinny inks him, he kind of inks him as if he's Calabac, which sometimes in the pencils, or when Mike Royer inks him, you see the differences between Calabac and Ulick. But I mean, Vinny had been inking Thor, so I'm sure he carries some of the, shorthand over to here. But as Calabac begins his charge, he runs headlong into a crackling energy barrier. What? This barrier of unknown force, I cannot penetrate it. Treacherous Orion, you have a hidden ally. In truth, he has, Calabac. Metron, is there nothing that is barred to your devilish Mobius chair? Walls and distance mean little to me. I can be anywhere, everywhere when I wish it. Right now, I wish to be at your side to help you in your destined course. I need no help from such as yourself, Metron. Yes, you do, as long as you fight before you think. To fight Calabac, one needs but power. You'll need more than that to fight Darkseid. You know what is at stake. I know my task. I will do it well. Highfather knows I will perish before I fail. And you will fail. Darkseid is already on Earth, even now paving the way for its complete subjugation. And you fret over Calabac? I feel, I anger, I fight. And you are like your cold machines. I serve life in my own way. What there is to know, I wish to know. My knowledge is my power. Time and space is my domain. When the old gods died, their bridge to Earth was destroyed. It was I who found the way to create what our young ones call the boom tube. So if you're following the sort of Asgard idea for the backstory, that bridge to Earth was the Rainbow Bridge. So somehow in the Ragnarok, the Rainbow Bridge was destroyed, and he's created sort of a new version of the Rainbow Bridge called the Boom Tube, a new sort of sci-fi version of it. The way Kirby draws the Boom Tube, it's segmented, and when I draw the Boom Tube, I don't think I ever got to draw it like in the pages of Superpowers, but I did, in sort of, preparatory work and stuff. But I drew it. I made those segments into, like multicolored sort of rainbow. So for me, the Boom Tube is sort of a tubular rainbow bridge. It's this, this like rainbow tube. Again, that's my own sort of reading of what's going on here. It is no secret to Darkseid. He and his power elite are now on Earth, creating a tube network beneath its great cities. Soon they will be able to reach any spot on that globe. So this tube network, I take that to mean it's a network of boom tubes that he's established under the Earth. So Darkseid can pop up anywhere on Earth and cause trouble. And again, reading other Kirby works, this is sort of like issue 1 of Fantastic Four, where the Mole Man has this underground network of tunnels where he can collapse any city on Earth with the press of a button. Just great stuff established here. And again, that thing of Metron's kind of like Orion's genie in a bottle, but he's a genie that he sort of fights with and resents and doesn't want his help. Darkseid's minions are busily at work on a mass director unit that will monitor the mind of every human. One of those minds holds the secret of the anti-life equation. If he contacts that mind, when he does, he will not survive to use that knowledge. I shall stop him. Darkseid is already many steps ahead of you. He was probing the minds of test humans before he left. Humans from Earth? Here? Beyond that door, Darkseid has broken the rule to bring humans through the tube. Darkseid has defied Highfather himself. There is no force to stay Darkseid's thirst for absolute power over all living things. So this is why my destiny brings me to Apocalypse. We're fleshing out what the anti-life equation is here. It's got something, it's hidden in the minds, it's got of humans, it's got something to do with freedom or the lack of freedom. And Darkseid's got these people hooked up to these machines, monitoring their brains, trying to find it, testing them for this larger unit, which will, be able to, better suss out the equation from the, collective unconscious of humanity. You are to return them to Earth, your next destination. You will need your power rods. So here's, Orion's superhero mission. Rescue these humans, take them back to Earth, and the supervillain is 10 steps ahead of you. You thought you were going to meet him here and fight, but already he's on Earth. He's been already setting up this whole structure. You got a lot of catching up to do to stop this guy from, destroying all life in the universe. I have transported them here, and now myself, to outside infinity. I'll not miss you, Metron. Just stay out of my path. Proper use of my Astroforce will dissolve the mechanisms that spellbind the humans. They awaken unharmed. The Astroforce awakens. Where am I? What is this place? Oh, what's happened? Have no fear. There is no time to explain. You must trust me. What kind of an act is this? Metron is gone, Orion. His barrier no longer holds me. Now you shall pay for my humiliation. Question mark. Good Lord, look! How high is your threshold of pain, Orion? This nerve beam from my beta club will test you. Turned on to full power, the nerve beam can cause an army to writhe in agony, but quick use of the Astroforce smothers its total effect. I've caught some of its impact. My body is afire as if with a mortal wound, but I must not show my pain, not to Calabac. Were these helpless humans not in my trust, I would engage Calabac hand to hand. So Orion is a fighter. He relishes a fight. He loves this stuff, and he is tough as nails. But, as the series goes on, he's going to have to learn how to use his head more, to avoid these situations that he can get, easily pulled into. But Earth waits for us. This short burst of astro power should stun Calabac and give us precious time. The astro flash is bright and powerful. Calabac shouts in dismay as he is struck down by its force. Oh, this is horrible, a nightmare, a living nightmare. This is real. We're not on Earth. Whoever you are, can you help us get back to Earth? Look, it's some kind of tube appearing out of thin air. It stems from the waves of the mind. Enter it. Calabac is reviving. Quickly, don't hesitate. Do as I say. Okay, I'll take any exit out of here. That hairy monster is on his feet. He's after us. You won't escape, Calabac. If I can't reach you before the tube fades, my club will. Death to Orion. Orion is the last to enter the tube as the streaking weapon is almost upon him. Too late, the tube is gone, and with him my prey. This isn't our last encounter, Orion. When we meet again, I shall deliver your carcass to Darkseid. Remember that. This kind of reminds me of the opening scene of the Masters of the Universe movie where He-Man and his friends escape through a boom tube, basically, using the cosmic key. I love this visual of the tube dissolving as the club bursts through it. And this the boom tube, it's kind of like there was a show in the 60s called The Time Tunnel. So I think Kirby had that on his mind when he was doing this. At that moment on Earth, there is a miraculous homecoming. It's amazing. This end of the tube has appeared on Earth. That fellow Orion really helped us. I can't believe it, but we're back. We're safe. With a rush of displaced air, Orion follows his charges into the cool night of Earth. So the second step of my destiny is fulfilled. The tube fades, and here I remain till there is victory over Darkseid. Orion, are we part of some fantastic plot? My name is Victor Lanza. I'm only an insurance broker, but how am I? Yes, how are we involved in all this? My name is Claudia Shane. I'm a secretary, not a pawn in some spy game. Hold. This game, as you call it, is bigger than you think. As large as the universe, and a battle looms which binds us all. There is a being aboard here with powers beyond your wildest dreams. Darkseid is here. As if in answer to Orion's words, the sky flashes and rumbles with the angry voice of an unseen giant. Darkseid, I have come. The battle begins. So Orion wants a fight, and there's thunder in the sky, the thunder of the gods, and Darkseid's somewhere in the city. Man, it's just really setting up, how bad do you want to read the next issue? How bad do you want to read the rest of this series? As I teased earlier, it begins with an epilogue, ends with a prologue. Prologue. As it was in the time of the old gods, the titanic struggle for the fate of mankind is to rage once again. The new gods wield greater power, for in our day, it is we who live in the dark shadow of the outcome.
I hear you, Orion. The battle begins.
Don't miss the opening blasts of the next exciting issue of the New Gods. Orion faces the King of Evil. Oh, deadly Darkseid. Man, what a tableau. You got some real badasses here. Darkseid, man, what a great introduction to, the greatest villain of all time. This great comic book villain. I mean, you are ready for the battle of the century. What a shame this comic didn't go on to run for 300 issues like so many superhero comics have. It only ran for 11, but man, are they, 11 issues of solid gold. We're going to talk more about this stuff in coming episodes. So we've just really scratched the surface and just so much here. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics and Fantastic Four Grand Design. And please join me next time for New God Sunday School.